Hello, and welcome to the Media Center's 9th Local Hero Awards series, in which we showcase 5 people from the Mid-Peninsula for outstanding achievement or contribution to the community. We solicited nominations and were especially looking for the unsung heroes. Each winner is an inspiration, and each has a great story to tell. Peter Fortenbaugh can check every box on a high-class resume. 2 Ivy League degrees, consultant at a top New York firm, senior VP in a Silicon Valley startup. His career trajectory was taking off. But somewhere along the way, he changed gears. These days, he spends his time rather differently as executive director of the Boys and Girls Club in East Palo Alto. The only thing that remains the same is his success rate. Since taking the job, the club has received many national awards and now has over 2,000 active members. In a community where the school dropout rate is notoriously high, the club has a 90% graduation rate among its members. You might be tempted to ask, how did this guy get here? Peter, what are you doing at the Boys and Girls Club, and where did that come from in your life?
Yeah. So what we're doing at the Boys and Girls Clubs is providing opportunities for all the kids. We're trying to address the opportunity gap that exists in our society. I mean, Silicon Valley is an amazing place to live. There's so much energy, optimism, hope here. And we want all the kids who are growing up to be able to access the greatness of Silicon Valley. So that's what we're doing fundamentally at the Boys and Girls Clubs, creating opportunity for all the youth.
And where did that come from in your life?
So I was very fortunate growing up in New Jersey, and I was given lots of opportunities. And I became aware very early on that a lot of my peers didn't have those same opportunities. And it's always just kind of gnawed at me a little bit. I've always wondered, how can we, make the world a little bit more fair? It's very idealistic. I remember the Fresh Air Fund used to advertise in the New York Times, and I was always, my goodness, these kids don't even have a chance to go to summer camp. But yeah, I was going down to the shore and having this amazing summer. And I was very aware that some inner city kids or lower income kids didn't have those opportunities.
And what discrepancies did you see in your own life on the Jersey Shore?
Yeah, so the shore was interesting. The town I grew up in the school year was a very middle class public high school town. But the summers was very different. It was a very exclusive town. Everyone who had been there for multiple generations. So it was very much a situation of who your parents were and who your grandparents were. A lot of the families came from the Philadelphia main line, and a lot of the families there brought help. They had help, and all the help were African American, and they all wore uniforms. And my grandparents were no different. They had 2 help, Isabel and Genevieve, and they lived with them, and they cooked, they cleaned, they shopped, they did all the work. And during the day they'd do all that work, and then they'd go downstairs to the basement and sleep, and my grandparents would go upstairs and sleep upstairs. Now, for me, it was amazing because I had 2 extra grandparents. So I had more love, more attention. They treated me like their own grandchild. But it was obvious to me that here they were, the ones doing the work, but they were sleeping in the basement. And there was something that didn't feel perfectly right to me. I remember also one time when one of the help's grandchildren came, and a grandson came, and he went on the beach. And my grandmother got very, very upset and was yelling, "Who let the boy on the beach? He shouldn't be on the beach."
Because he was the help.
Because, yes, he was an African-American boy, and I mean, this is in the 70s, but that kind of racism still existed. And here I was being treated as this golden child, if you will, being loved by everyone. And yet this boy couldn't even have the same decency of being allowed to go to the beach. And I'd go back home in the school year, and my friends didn't have the opportunity to go to the shore either. And even along the shore, there are different stratifications of income levels and houses and all that. And we were really in sort of the nicest, the toniest town, if you will. And people used to make fun of kids who came to the beach for the day because they couldn't afford to live at the beach town. And you'd see these kids come to the beach and then pack up and go home. But yeah, I got to stay there in these beautiful homes, and it always kind of bothered me when people made fun of them. And yeah, I just want to be part of a community where we are more equal. Yeah.
So fast forward to now, what do you see now that is similar or different?
You see it tremendously here, unfortunately, in Silicon Valley where we live. The opportunity gap is just incredible. When I started doing this 13 years ago, there wasn't a lot of press about it. Fortunately, today there is. But you see the opportunities that my kids have in Palo Alto are wonderful, and I'm so happy for them and proud to provide them with those. But yet, you see the families who are struggling in Eastern Menlo Park or Redwood City or East Palo Alto, 4 families per house, and just struggling on day by day.
So between your personal life and your job, there's a gap.
So between my personal life and my job, there's a tremendous gap, and I see it every day. And my mission is just try to bridge that the best I can, to be part of the solution, hopefully, to level out our society just a little bit if possible.
So I'd like to see, just for contrast, if for nothing else, a day in the life when you were a high-end consultant versus a day in the life at the Boys and Girls Club today.
Yeah, it's very different. A day in the life of a consultant, I mean, you live in your nice apartment, you get in your nice car, you drive to your nice office, you talk to nice people, and you complain about the weather or things like that. Maybe you complain about not having enough stock options, or your bonus wasn't big enough, and you do your work. And it's very self-driven. You worry about your career and you're focused on yourself. Now at the Boys and Girls Clubs, it's, you're not working that same kind of environment anymore. It's a place where there are greater needs, but it's more real in the sense of the needs are more immediate, and it's working on a solution that's bigger than yourself. So rather than just focusing on a solution or a business of how do I improve myself and advance my career, now I'm part of a team where none of us are focused on our own careers. I mean, we think about them, of course, but we're focused primarily on how can we make this a great community for all of our families to live in. And our careers become secondary. We still care about them. I'm not saying they're not there, but the primary driver, the overarching mission it's a mission-driven job as opposed to a sort of career or position-driven job.
Was it hard to give up? Was there anything in that was hard to give up?
There were some things that were hard to give up, obviously economically. You make sacrifices. But more importantly, I'm no longer really sort of an epicenter of Silicon Valley technology, innovation. In my previous companies, I was. And that was really fun, to be able to travel globally, or have these great meetings with CEOs and be on the cutting edge of what's happening. It makes for more interesting cocktail, hour stories. Now I'm more sort of in the trenches, much more parochial in my view, which I accept. I embrace that because the upside of that is you're part of a community.
Yeah, you said something that surprised me, which was when you were in consulting, there were times when you felt lonely. Tell me about that.
There were a couple of times you felt lonely as a consultant. When you first join, you're part of this big team, and it's very energizing. You're like part of a little army that goes from business school. But after a few years, it just becomes about you. And I remember once I went to a Christmas party after I was there about 2 years, and I'd see some of my friends, but no one really was talking about how well McKinsey was doing. It was all about how well are you doing in your career. And there wasn't a sense of we're part of a team. We weren't really working with each other. And then I remember our second time at my last company, where after a deal, while a deal was in process, we went out to dinner afterwards, and the conversation was all about stock options, and I need more stock options, and this isn't fair. I'm not, he's got more than me. And the sense of fairness, I was like, wow. I mean, that's sort of talk about the 0.01% and the 0.01% worrying about what's fair. I thought we were all pretty lucky, where we were. And so both those times I felt like this is all about self-driven careers or maximizing your own position. And I felt very lonely there. I want to be part of a team that was mission-driven and was trying to make our community a better place for all of us.
So a void appeared.
Yes.
How did you go about filling that?
So, as the company I was with was kind of winding down, I wanted to figure out what was in our community, what opportunities existed. And I remember one funny thing was once I was driving through a town for my job in the middle of the day, which you rarely do, usually on 101 or in office buildings, but I had to for some reason. And I saw all these kids in a playground in a school. And I was like, wow, like kids are actually in school. It wasn't part of my whole worldview. I didn't think that even existed. So I was like, wow, there's schools out there, there are families, like what happens during the day? So I wanted to be part of this, I wanted to be part of my community. And I wanted to devote my working hours and my career to, create opportunities for everybody in the community.
So you found the Boys and Girls Club. Did you walk in, piece of cake, we're changing everything, you're lucky to have me? How did that go?
Well, some people might say I did. I certainly tried not to. I found the Boys and Girls Clubs. They were good enough to offer me a consulting gig. So I did that for about 3 months. And then they hired me as an operations consultant, or operations director. So I did that for 2 years. And then I became executive director. And it was tough at first. There was a lot of people who distrusted me. I've got a firsthand lesson in how we're all the same. People are all the same. Everyone talks about sort of the rich and the white being prejudiced and stereotyping, and there's a lot of truth to that. I see it. But I think sometimes some of the low-income folks may stereotype the rich as well, and I see that quite a lot. Not to say that I was necessarily super rich, but relatively speaking. And there was a lot of resentment towards me coming in at a senior level when people had been working for a long time in the organization. Maybe I should have come in at a lower level to start. I could see the value in that in hindsight. But rumors flew about me. The idea that it was nepotism, and I wasn't related to anybody in the organization. That I was an unemployed dot-commer. So,
did you find that transition to becoming accepted maybe more difficult than you expected?
It was a lot more difficult than I expected. It was a lot of nights wondering, why am I doing this? I mean, I could go back to my other jobs where you walk in and just by the nature of your resume, you're granted a certain respect. And here, no one cared about any of that. In fact, it was a negative in a lot of times. So there was a lot of nights in the first couple of years where I just asked myself, why, this is crazy. I don't need this. But at the end of the day, it was what I cared about. And it was the mission I cared about.
So on the scale of difficult things you've done in your life, where does this fall?
Yeah, certainly professionally, it was the most difficult thing I had done, without question. It was also taking leadership responsibility, which I hadn't done before. I had managed, smaller teams in my previous jobs, but now I was responsible. And there's this great story parable about the pig and the pig and the chicken going to business together, open up a restaurant offering ham and eggs breakfasts, and the chicken's involved, but the pig's committed. And I'd always been a chicken at work. All my jobs, I worked hard. I was there, but I was kind of a worker, and I left on the weekends. When I joined the Boys and Girls Club, and especially when I became executive director, I was the pig. I was all in, and even now, and it's much more challenging. I'm the owner. I'm responsible, for everything, and that's rewarding as well.
That's interesting. I don't want to follow that analogy too far because, of course, the pig gets devoured, but we won't go there. But I like the analogy. What have you found that maybe you haven't expected?
It's been more rewarding than I hoped it would be. The coming in part was much harder than I thought, but it's been more rewarding in the end, even than I thought it would be, to see the changes that we can make, to see how we're able to change lives, to see the potential that exists in these young people we're working with, to see that all they need is just some opportunities. It's also been harder in the sense of the challenges that our families face are greater than I was appreciative of.
Yeah, tell me about that. Tell me about some of the obstacles that they face that maybe are less obvious from the outside.
Yeah, I've really grown to appreciate the importance of context. And I believe that context is not necessarily determinate, but very, very important in people's lives. And I think a lot of folks, my neighbors and my friends, don't always understand how challenging the lives are these kids face in terms of not having housing. 25% of the youth that we serve are homeless. Struggling just with day-to-day pressures in terms of food, not having role models. So for me, it was easier to go to Princeton because my brother went there, my dad went there. That was the easier path to take. But if your father, well, he's not around, and your mom has less than an 8th grade education, and your brother dropped out of high school to join a gang, I don't think I would have had the strength in that situation, to graduate from high school and then go on to college. But yet, we constantly see kids who do have the strength to do that. So the resilience in many of these students is amazing, but the challenges they face, it's very hard to think long-term, and when you're dealing with short-term pressures. And I don't think people appreciate how, in some ways, devastating or constricting short-term pressure is when you're trying to make long-term decisions. It really, you just have to focus on the immediate.
How much difference can an after-school program make? That's what you are.
Well, we think we're much more than an after-school program. That's the core of what we do, I suppose. I believe we can make a difference. We see it all the time. We can't be everything. The schools have to be a key part of the solution. The families, in many cases, have to be a key part as well. But in a lot of times, what these kids just need is a chance. They need opportunity. They need relationships. They need someone to believe in them. And at a place like the Boys and Girls Clubs, they can get that sense of belonging, that sense of safety they may not have at home or anywhere else. And if they can just come to the club and for 5 hours have a chance to be a kid, to feel warmth, to feel love, to feel hope and opportunity, and then also get help with academic skills so they can succeed in school, that's often the spark that they need. So then they can go on and take advantage of the opportunities that may exist for them.
So you come in with this guy who's kind of had everything, and these kids look at you, and there's a lot that you have had that they don't have. Yeah. And yet you yourself recently have come face to face with a real personal challenge that you've been quite open about. Tell me what that is, for starters.
So about 6 months ago, I was diagnosed with melanoma stage 3A, so it's metastasized. So I've had to go through some treatment for that. That's what I'm dealing with.
And when you were told this, I mean, how dire a situation was it? What were you told?
So I was told I had melanoma, and they did some tests. I'd have 2 surgeries, and found out it did spread to my lymph nodes, which is serious. The statistics aren't real great for melanoma. Fortunately, research is improving. What's interesting to me, though, or what I've always had a very strong sense of mortality, and I don't know why. I've always thought that every day is a gift. I don't believe in predestiny, and I always felt, and part of why I made this career change that I did 13 years ago is that I wanted to do something I cared about. And I didn't want to work, incredibly hard till I was 50 and then raise my grandkids. I wanted to help raise my kids. I wanted to have a job where I'm part of a community. That's really important. So I've always thought about that. And when this happened, it was very peaceful in the sense of I was very much at peace that there's nothing I would do differently knowing that I have this. If I had to go back, I don't feel like I've wasted the last 13 years. I feel like I've been doing everything I wanted to do. I feel like I've been a good role model for my kids. I feel like I've been working on something super important. I work with amazing people, both staff and board. I've surrounded myself with people who really care. The outpouring of support from the staff and the board of directors is just reaffirmed to me, this is where I want to be. This is what matters. I'm not some random VP of business development or some random lawyer, plugging in hours who can be displaced or replaced by someone else. And so this is just a reminder, and I've been working as hard as ever through this because this is what I care about. And I'm blessed to have the opportunity to spend my working hours on something that really matters to me personally.
So it's fair to say you've learned a lot, both from the club and from the illness?
I've learned a lot from both, absolutely. I mean, just, when you're face to face, and I still am with sort of statistics and reality, you want to maximize your time, and you want to work on things that really matter to you.
At the end of the day, which I think every day, what is the most rewarding thing? Maybe even the most rewarding in an unexpected way?
The most rewarding thing at the end of the day is knowing that we are leading an organization that is impacting a lot of kids' lives and is, in some small way, making Silicon Valley a great place for all families to live.
Do you have a vision for the future of the club?
So my vision for the club going forward, my vision isn't really so much about the club, it's about the community. And my vision is that all the youth in our community have access to the kind of programs and supports that the Boys and Girls Clubs today is able to provide. Whether we provide them or another organization provides them or the schools provide them, we're agnostic to that. But we want all of the kids in Silicon Valley to have safe places to go after school, to have support with their schoolwork, have a chance to do art programs, sports programs, to grow up to be well-rounded children and to be able to access this incredible Silicon Valley that exists here today.
Excellent. We're out of time. Thank you so much. Good luck with that, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Most of these suicides is depression, often undiagnosed. An estimated 80% of those suffering from it do not receive help. What's unusual about Sammy Hartley is not just her devotion to educating our community about depression and suicide, nor is it just that she's so open and honest about the subject, but also that she does so at such a young age. During her years as a Stanford student and immediately after graduation, as both a volunteer and professional, Sammy has worked directly with students, families, and healthcare professionals to bring mental health to our community. She has now educated over 1,500 teens about their own mental wellness.